when the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality. Open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.
Hello, book clubbers! Welcome back. Hope you're dancing in your seat. I'm Jeff Kanata. I'm here with Lana Bashinsky. Hello, Lana.
Hello, good morning, afternoon. I don't know where I am. I'm in a different time zone, and you will be able to tell because the time will be chiming in the background. I'm at my in-laws, and they have a massive grandfather clock that's going to go off every 15 minutes. So welcome to really feeling the passage of time in this episode.
I love it. I love it. You know, it's been a moment since I brought this up, and it just struck me again that it always bothers me when I edit these episodes because there's a quirk to our little recording system. I use Zencaster to record these. And for some reason, it like offsets me just enough that it looks like I have no rhythm at all when I'm dancing. Like I'm just off the beat. Why? Like Atlanta's like on it and I'm just off and it bothers me so much. So much,
funny.
Lana.
I actually think about that every time we dance. And I'm like, oh, the software must be so smart. I'm like, put things together.
If you watch any of the videos, I look like a total Elaine from Seinfeld, you know. Anyway, it's okay. I don't mind. That's the problem. I'm not the problem. The benefit of dancing is that you can dance like nobody's watching, even when people aren't. All right, we got a big episode. Super fun. Lots of really juicy stuff in these two chapters of the Bonehunters. We got chapters 13 and 14. Good stuff, juicy stuff, exciting stuff to get into.
I read them in the correct order this week.
Well done, Lana.
Thank you. Thank you.
We always like to start the show, however, with a non-spoiler topic so that if you're not caught up with where we are in the novel, you can still hang out for a few minutes, chat about books. And Lana has, I think, a pretty interesting topic. What would you like to bring up, Lana?
The question I have for you today is, would you rather read one long book, individual book, like 900-ish pages, or three smaller books at like 300 pages each? I stayed with a friend of mine who is a professor at Loyola and went to her beautiful apartment that has, it's like a library, the number of books in there. And the one thing that really stuck to me is, a lot of these books are like normal sized books. And I'm almost always reading big old fantasy books.
Well, I think that's a quality of the fantasy genre is that they tend to be these massive tomes. And when you're outside that genre, you know, I watch a lot of booktubers and a lot of them aren't talking about fantasy novels. And they're like, I read 15 books this month. And it's like, yeah, because they were all 250 pages. I get it. You were reading pamphlets compared to what I'm reading. And I think maybe that's just a quality of like, there's less heavy lifting in a non-fantasy book. Not that they are less than, in my opinion, at all. There's obviously great literature in every genre, but I think Erikson actually talks about this. I've heard him talk about this on panels and such, where, you know, if you're talking about Paris, you can go, hey, Paris. And all the readers are like, oh, I know what Paris, I have all these connotations to what Paris means to me and the kind of place it is and the flavor of the food that's there and the kind of people that are there and the culture and all those things are inherent. Don't have to do any work as the author to convey that. But when you say Raraku, it's like, well, now I got to explain the entire culture, the history. You know, there's a lot more heavy lifting in a fantasy world because you're starting from zero on our shared knowledge of that place. And maybe that's a reason that things are much longer in that genre. Anyway, that wasn't the question.
I know I haven't thought about that at all. That is interesting. And obviously accurate.
I mean, I don't know if that's the only reason, right? There may be other contributing factors for the fact that fantasy novels tend to be big. Maybe that's just become what's expected in the marketplace also. And so fans are drawn to these larger because they want this, it's the only genre that has epic right in the descriptor, right? Epic fantasy. It's like, you're not going to like epic romance or, epic mystery.
But it's also interesting because I feel like there's lots of fantasy that is like you can have something that is fantasy, or can you? Maybe, I don't know, that is fantasy but set in like real places, or just fantasy imply only fantastical places.
I mean, obviously you can have things set in a normal place and have fantastical elements in them. I think that's, we can find lots of examples of that. But when you're talking about epic fantasy, I think that kind of connotes a wholly invented world, and I don't think you need to have world building in a lot of other genres of literature. Jonathan Franzen is not writing and worried about world building, what I mean? But anyway, the Would You Rather, I think, is an interesting one because, like you, I tend to bite off the big chunky books. Obviously, we started this book club like with huge, not like 10 huge novels, and so I tend to be drawn to those. But I also really love the satisfaction of finishing a book, even if it's only part one. Even if it's like you're not really finished and the story's not really done, but that like
sub book,
yes, sub book, right?
Yeah.
But that just like that closing of the final page, even though I'm reading on a Kindle, it's still very satisfying to like 100% done.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I feel like for so long, especially when I really had, like, there's a period of time, right when you move to a new city, there's a period of time where you don't really have a social life. Like maybe you're like going out, but you're still going out alone. I did not go out. I stayed at home and I played the piano and I read lots of books, and I didn't have a car, and I found myself like reading books too quickly and being like, ugh, I have to go back to the store. That means I have to get an Uber or a cab and go to the bookstore. And it was like a whole thing. And so I was like only on the hunt for like the largest, longest books that I could find so that I wouldn't have to go like every 2 days back to the bookstore and be spending all my money. So there's a point in time where I was like, I'm only reading long books and only giant series that I can just definitively be like, I know I'm going to finish this because I've got that brain problem that makes me do that. But now,
just to prevent you from having to get in the car again, like this.
I didn't have a driver's license.
Yeah,
it was a whole thing, and I was in Southern California, the worst. And now, like only recently, with like picking up like the little the Murderbot Diaries, like short stories in between, I'm like, oh yeah, I can just enjoy things now. I think I could let myself read short stories again because things
are so annoying.
Because I have a driver's license and a Kindle. I could just buy it on the internet.
This reminds me of a quick little anecdote I'll share. When I was, I don't know what age, probably around 12, I'm guessing, I had been gifted as a child, as a very young child, the entire, I suspect entire, I have no way of knowing. It was a lot of books. What I thought at that time was the complete Hardy Boys mysteries in hardback. And they were all these like very narrow, but just a massive blue backed complete Hardy Boys. Stop me if I mentioned this before. I suddenly realized maybe I've mentioned this before. Anyway, no. I had those. And I did not want to read them. I was just so uninterested as a like, young preteen tween in the Hardy Boys at all. But I had been gifted them. I don't even remember who gave them to me. So back then, I mean, I guess there's still a few today, but back then, used bookstores were a thing, and were a big thing. And so I brought my entire massive collection of these like pristine, untouched, basically hardback Hardy Boys things to this used bookstore, and I got like this obscene credit for turning it in. It was like hundreds of dollars. It was like $200 or something. Like as a 12-year-old kid in the late 80s, it was an incredible amount of money, and so I had this credit, and I would go to this bookstore, and I would get these little, used paperbacks that were like
$1?
79 cents or
Yeah.
something, or like $1.50, on the cover price. And it was just like, I could get an infinite amount of these. Like, I'm never going to have to spend my own money ever. And so it was the greatest, because I would go and I would just have a stack of these paperbacks, that all had crinkly, very used, dog-eared copies. I didn't care. I just got to read the books. And so I would have these stacks. And I think I told you that I would like line them up on my bed as to what order I was going to read the books in, Oh,
You're
man,
such a
great.
little entrepreneur. That's so.
I don't know if that counts as being an entrepreneur.
You have so many little stories like that where you're like, I got this thing I didn't want and I turned it into something I did. That's such a like healthier childhood thing. I feel like my whole childhood brain was like all money converted to how many 5-cent candies you could get from 7-Eleven. I wish it was all money converted into how many books from the used bookstore, but.
Well,
you get a lot of 5-cent candies for $200.
I was not above the 5-cent candies either, or the quarters into the arcade machine, or a lot of frivolous things too. But yeah. Anyway, we'd love to hear what your preference would be as to big long tome or lots of shorter tomes. Obviously, we're doing big ones on the books on the book club, and we have 2 juicy chapters to jump into. So let's do it. Spoilers starting now for chapters 13 and 14 of the Bonehunters. Chapter 13 starts with our boy Gnos. And the Tregild wagon is still not too good, but they got it operational. They got it moving. And Perrin suddenly remembers that he has the Atatarol sword, which we haven't seen hide nor hair of in quite a while. But he got that from what's her name that died? Begins with an L. It does begin with an L.
Lorne. Adjunct Lorne,
right. And for some reason, he decides to give it to Karpalan Demisand, who immediately says, let's smash this.
Well, it was payment. I guess that was his like TTG payment, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Because, they pay like all of their shareholders. And so him being like, let's smash this. Originally, I was like, oh, yeah, they want to break it. But then
it's like everybody gets their share.
Everybody gets their little share of the sword. I guess it's the Atatarol that is the hot commodity, and not everybody got some slicers. Nobody got that Atatarol magique.
Yeah. I would like to, as payment, I'd like to give you my priceless figurine. Smash! Everybody gets a piece. It's like, oh, okay. I guess that's how that works. Everybody gets a piece.
I also am still just kind of enamored with the idea that like this sword is going to stop all of the magic unless you rub it or wrap it in a little bit of fur, and then it won't be as
cover
good.
It up. If you don't see it, you don't know. Ignorance is bliss. But still, I thought pretty cool that they smash it and everybody takes it, and Gnos retains a shard, so he's still got a shard of Atatarol, which I suspect will come in handy at some point.
Picture it like a little kryptonite. He's like a Batman situation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. A little shard of kryptonite in case you need it. So then he finds his way into this basin, and all of a sudden these 2 soldiers right up next to him are like, hey buddy, what are you doing wearing cool the
cloak?
cape? Yeah. The capes of the soldiers, to which I responded, oh, right. They wear capes. That's so cool. I haven't been thinking about the fact that they all have capes on the whole time. Capes are awesome. I love capes.
These are like their rain cloaks specifically, right? He's like got the hood up. It's very like the mental image I had is like very evocative of him on the horse through the rain with the big hood coming forward. So he's like, I really like the imagery there. But also one of the things that I was kind of surprised about was before he left the TTG crew, he also like separated from his Jacob friend that he's been traveling with.
Oh, right. And that's a great point. We should mention Ganath
Ganath.
Said she's off to fix the ritual. And he's like, well, what's the ritual going to do? And she's like, oh, it's going to capture one of those sky keeps. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty important.
Well, I remember when she was like busted out of there. Oh, I'm so glad that you remembered that detail. When she busted out of her barrow, she's like, well, there's a ritual that was broken that I made. And I think we both assumed that it was the Daragoth or the binding of the Trobaral. The Trobaral.
Oh, right. Yeah, the Jim. Yeah.
Of the Jim. And then she's like, no, the ritual I have to go fix is one of the sky keeps.
Right.
And I think we didn't, at least I don't remember being like, oh yeah, the sky keeps are free now. I feel like that was like a little detail about which binding she was related to that we didn't have before.
Totes. Agreed. Yeah, interesting stuff. And I wonder if we'll hear more about that. I suspect we haven't heard the last of the Sky Keeps and what's going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Gano's riding along. Two soldiers are like, hey, buddy, are you a deserter? And Perrin's like, I mean, technically I am, I guess. But also I outrank both of you. So take me to your leader. And they're like, sure, pal, we're arresting you. And they take him to see Captain Sweet Creek, which I think one of the cooler names. One of the soldiers, Sweet Creek. I like that one. Who is like, yeah, I believe you 0%. Lock this dude up in the morning, pull off all his fingernails, torture him. To which Perrin says, a punch.
I also like that this captain, they show up and I think right when they capture him, like, all right, buddy. Well, welcome, bucko, to One Arm's host. And it's like, ooh, One Arm's host. This is exciting.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, we've seen the bridge burners talk frequently about like having crappy captains. And you're like, oh, but you're the bridge burners. Like, you're also competent. But like when Gnu's first showed up, they're like, another crappy captain. And in this case, with Sweet Creek, seems like another crappy captain. She's like lying in bed being like, whatever, torture him and then execute him. Now I'm napping. Like whatever her deal was, you just like, oh yeah, another apathetic leader for like a passionate people. And then Gnus just knocks them both out. Is like, anyway, I'll just tie
him up. I like the detail.
I'll find the tent myself.
The detail that Erikson gives on like how he ties them up. It's like a full page of just describing getting the materials, gagging them, but not so much that they can't breathe. It's like, I loved it.
I love that he like tests, like sort of covers their mouth. It's like, can they breathe? And it's like, no. All right. I won't just suffocate them.
Yeah. And then he just kind of like continues on riding into the camp. And then all the soldiers don't even pay him any mind until he runs into Outrider Herlashell, who's like, hey, I recognize you.
And he's like, you do?
Ixnay on the aim day.
He's like, you recognize me? Okay, prove it was my name, but really, really quietly. And what's the name you're going to call me instead?
Yeah. So they concoct this plan to pretend that Gnos is actually Captain Kindly because everybody is kind of scared / hates Captain Kindly because he's such a jerk.
I love that he's like, I also punched those two people back there. And he's like, the princess? He's like, honestly, that sounds like Captain Kindly. This is a great fit.
Yeah. That's exactly what Kindly would do. Yeah, she's a Flari princess. The Captain Sweet Creek is pretty awesome. So interesting that that's happening. Then we check in with Lestara Yill, who is walking with Feridan's Sort. And they talk a little bit about the fact that Feridan was on the storm wall and actually is not allowed to leave and somehow did. And they have this wonderful little kind of discussion about how the gods, she's like, well, it's all just luck. It doesn't matter. One battle, who wins, who loses, it's all just Opon's luck. The fact that you survived, just Opon's luck. And Lestara is like, no, Opon had nothing to do with me surviving. which I thought was very funny because it's like, no, a different god. Cotillion saved you. So I read it like she was like, gods, I did it. No, it's not gods. And it's like, okay, not Opon, but a different god literally saved your ass.
Yeah. Literally pulled you from the fire of your certain demise.
Yeah.
I also love that she's like, oh, was it I might be getting this backwards. She was like, okay, well, who like saved you from the wall? Like, which god saved you from the wall?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh no, that is Lestar being like, none of them.
Yeah.
But
no, I think she does throw it back in. You're right. I think she throws it back in Feridan's face of like, oh yeah, so gods are the only. It's just God. So which god was it that she's like, oh right, no, I did that myself.
Well, I read it as something like, was it because Opon is like those two faces, like siblings. There's like a guy and a girl, and they're like, was it the lady or the bro who saved you?
I think isn't the lady good luck and the bro bad luck? Yeah.
Yes. But then she said something that's like, neither of them. But I didn't hear it as a way that she's like, I guess it was me. I read it in such a way that it felt like maybe they had similar experiences of like another god intervened. Or I read it as though, I mean, I'm like, maybe she's Opon, like moment, like some kind of greater connection, and not just like, oh, I guess you're right. We are our own people. I don't think she was quickly giving up her convictions. There was like a little teaser there, but I don't know what it means.
Interesting. The next scene is Kalam and Quickben and Absalar. They're all riding through. Kalam has this recollection of the Black Dog campaign when they fought the Mont Irregulars and the Nathi army and the Crimson Guard. And Quickben's like, hey, that reminds me, Kalam, why have you not murdered Pearl yet?
Yeah.
That guy totally tossed you off a boat, literally stabbed you in the back, and yet he lives. That doesn't seem like my buddy old assassin-y Kalam over here.
Mm-hmm.
And Kalam's like, yeah, well, I'm curious to find out why the Empress still is having him spy on us. It doesn't make any sense to me. And whose side are Lysine and Adjunct Tavor on in this God war that's about to happen or is starting to happen? Interesting stuff, I thought.
Interesting stuff, and like the sort of push and pull of little factions between them of like Quick and Kalam kind of working together, but kind of mistrusting each other in their own little space. Absalar being like, y'all don't even know what's up. Gods be going crazy out there.
Right.
And then being like, maybe I'm here to kill you. Just kidding. Unless, just kidding.
Yeah.
And then Fiddler being like, nobody say these things. Everybody stop fighting. Kind of vibe. Like, I've got a child. Everybody just leave me alone. It was like an interesting and very contentious dynamic between our Bridgeburner buddies.
It's fun that they're like best buds, but they're also, I think that dynamic rings true to me. The best friends that are also always at each other's throats, it's a kind of a neat dynamic.
Yeah.
I also, that scene ends with Quickben basically being like, well, you know what? I want Pearl dead. And everybody's like, well, that's very unlike Quickben to be so forthright about it. So adamant. Yeah.
So adamant and clearly like trying to guide or like help Kalam into making a choice that he wanted him to make anyway.
Yeah.
It just shows like he's really thinking about a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about the Fiddler. Fiddler is the next scene there where I love that we get more Korab. Korab continues to be one of my favorite characters in the entire series. And I love that, there's this kind of burgeoning friendship between Fiddler, or not friendship, but just sort of respect. Korab saves Fiddler. Fiddler's like, okay, you're in my army now. You're in my squad. And Korab's like, well, do I have to do the rite of passage about spearing a baby? And Fiddler's like, the what now?
What?
It's like, how you guys all spear babies in order to be part of a club? And Fiddler's like, that's not a thing, Korab. That's not a thing.
He's like, is
that
that
we
what
do.
Leoman told you that? Because it's just untrue. And then he's like, oh, Leoman stood for nothing.
Everything I thought he was is not what he is. Then he says, man, you know, I don't know who I hate more, that Leo man or that Dun Sparrow. And Fiddler's like, hubba what? Dubba Dun Sparrow?
I just love that he was like, you know, this Whiskey Jack's little sister, little sister, and the age difference of like having her hip like bounced her on his knee, of like them like coming in and stealing the sister. Very cool turn for Dunsparrow. Never in a million years would I have guessed that. I don't even know if we knew Whiskey Jack had family, and they even said
no. He told that story about his sister in a previous book. Like, oh, man, I'm not going to remember the details of it, but Whiskey Jack has that whole moment where he tells a story about his sister and how he sort of let her down, and he has this guilt about the kind of person she turned out to be because she was so dark and like, yeah.
I do remember that as you're saying the sort of context for it. I had totally forgotten about that. But either way, I never would have put those pieces together. And like how I like that Fiddler's like, oh, they're fighting up there. I'm going to go back here with my buddies. And there's like crazy news. He's like, I got to go run up there with my buddies.
Meanwhile, holding a child the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah. But it's so dark that like her mother died in childbirth and the kid stayed in the dead mom's body longer than it should have. I mean, it's very dark stuff, but sort of as it came out, as
she
Dun
pushed
Sparrow,
her way out.
Yeah, was born from death, and then they like brought her. The townspeople like brought her to Hood's temple. It was like she's like attuned to death and allied with Hood somehow, and it's so and you know, Fiddler and Whiskey Jack their whole lives are like, oh, hilarious. Isn't that hilarious how she's aligned with Hood? And meanwhile, she's kind of like getting darker and darker and darker the whole time.
Well, it's one of those things that is like, okay, she had this circumstance of her birth, but then would she truly have stayed aligned with death if the townspeople hadn't have been like, oh no, this baby's ruined, and we marked it and we made a ritual for her and put it in the temple? Like, would that still have been the case if the village had not contributed to that? Or it says that Whiskey Jack and Fiddler went and had to steal the baby from the temple because they effectively sacrificed it by just leaving it in there.
Yeah.
And they stole Dun Sparrow out of there and escaped and like tried to make light of this situation, but inevitably failed.
Pretty insane. Such a dark backstory, but really, really fascinating. And then we switch over to Absalar's POV, and she's kind of thinking about Whiskey Jack as well, and how, you know, trying to, it's exactly what you said before, that she's like, man, these guys are weird. Am I going to have to murder any of them? What are they, who are they really aligned with? Who, you know, was Whiskey Jack aligned with Hood? Nah, he was just kind of he was kind of atheistic anyway. He wasn't aligned with any god. She's working through it, like who, you know, she thinks about Dasim Ultor and how he was Hood's mortal sword, and maybe they were this cult that you know, was birthed from Dasim's death, basically. Interesting stuff, and she's kind of working through it. And she's like, I don't trust Kalam and Quick Ben. I don't know whose side they're really working on, and more importantly, they're always up to something. They're always got schemes and feints and, you know, stuff that they're trying to, they're trickery.
Plans on plans on plans.
That's right. Then we switch over to Bottle, who is like, everybody's carrying children. I'm carrying rats.
Carrying the rat babies, and everybody's like, are we going to eat those? And he's like, don't be disgusting. And they're like, no, he's married to them. Those are his babies now. Ain't the Bottle? And he's like, everybody leave me alone about my rats.
I love my rat babies. And Bottle notices Tellerest and Curdle, our little skelly bones, our little possessed lizard skeletons. And he's like, interesting reveal coming soon for that.
Yeah.
And then there's this moment where Smiles is mad at Lestara for having all her hair. And I love how these chapters we learn that, like, oh yeah, they were all in a firestorm. Their clothes are burned. Their hair is gone. They're just like,
they're just like, they don't have any weapons. They're just like truly like in ragged. They are just, all of their clothes are in shreds. Half of them are like just topless.
Yeah.
Whether like whoever they are, they're just doing the best they can, getting completely scorched by the sun in this desert.
Awful.
Brutal. But
out of
it's
the
like
frying pan into the fire, man.
Yeah, and so interesting for them to be like, Lestara has all of her hair that seems wacky, and they're like, well, she's covered in soot and everything too, and they're like, yeah, I guess I'm just jealous.
And I just have this image in my head of like a little tuft of hair, like she looks like Jim Carrey as the Fire Marshal Bill. I got something. She's like, I guess I'm just jealous that she looks. It's hilarious image in my head.
It's a hilarious image in my head, but it also makes me be like, wouldn't everybody be so sus of the person whose hair is all intact? Like, I would be instantly suspicious, being like, cool, luxurious locks. You said you were by the raging fire? Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah. Very funny. So then we have this wonderful moment with Sergeant Hellion, who I also love. Anytime we're in Sergeant Hellion's POV, and she's just like, I'm angry and drunk and going through withdrawals, and I hate everybody. Love her. I hate insects. Bugs are yucky.
I love that, like the way that her section is described, of like everything is too clear now. Like she can see everybody's faces and their wrinkles and their pores, and everything is too tangible. It's a tactile chapter filled with her own phobia.
I love her. And then we get Gessler for a moment, who's like, his burnished, went through the fire, kind of almost descended skin doesn't have any problems with the blisters everybody else is having,
which I think is so interesting. And like, I forget, I feel like we talked about this because I brought him up before. Is Bowden being like, I'm immune to fire,
right? And
then not being immune to fire was like weird. But then Gessler, they're doing fire, and he is fine.
Yeah. Interesting. The healers, Dead Smell and Lutz, are trying to heal everybody up as best they can, and then they have this idea. They're like, what we should do? Gessler's like, what we need to do? We're idiots. We're running out. Nobody has clothes. We're all this is ridiculous. We need food. We need weapons. There's an army out ahead of us. We're never going to catch up to them at this rate. What we need to do is we need to send somebody on a horse, lickety split. Absalar has this really cool horse. Send Absalar. And they're like, no, nobody knows who Absalar is. They'll be like, you're a liar. We don't have any. No. So we got to get somebody they will recognize.
I like that they're like, all right, Absalar, we have this horse. Send Absalar. And she's like, okay. Like, no, not Absalar. They don't know her. And she's like, okay.
Yeah.
And like, send this person.
Absalar's horse. Okay.
And like in Absalar's chapter, the one thing we forgot to mention is that she's like, oh, I was like using this as like, I'm going to keep going, but now I'm stuck. I'm snarled in this web, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to cut myself out to go do what I need to do, which is, it's interesting, the idea of like, she is on the horse. She could have been like, sucks to suck, folks, and then ridden away. Right. But the fact that she is sort of making this choice to stay, or feeling compelled to stay, or whatever it is about it, it's interesting that sort of feeling like it's out of her hands to do anything about it is. It's interesting to me. So, but they identify I forget her name.
Malazan
Galani as like the best rider, and she's one of the heavies that we had met before. And they go to recruit her, And as they go back, it cuts to like that squad's POV, and they're like, "Ooh, you're in trouble.
No, it's so
Teachers
good.
are coming." And they're like, "You're gonna go ride on this horse," but she's also like, all of her clothes are burnt off, and they're kind of like,
Yeah, I know what we'll do. We'll send the topless lady to the army. That'll get their attention.
"Oh yeah, somebody will be looking."
I do love that scene where they're like, "You're busted." She's like, "Okay, you don't get my stuff. You get my. I don't like you. I know I'm gonna die. So you get my stuff."
They're
Very
like,
funny.
"You like me?" It's like, "No, I don't like them."
Yeah, no, yeah. I specifically do not like you. It's not that I like that one. I just don't want you to have my stuff. So funny. So Masangolani gets on Absalar's horse and rides like the wind. Then we cut over to Dejim. Dejim Nabral is hunting, eating, murdering. He's visiting all these dead cities, just chowing down on fisher people.
just remembering. Well, I thought he like used to, like he previously ate all those people, and so he's just like remembering when he ate all the village. He's like, "Oh, I shouldn't have eaten the whole village,
You gotta leave
and
a
then I
snack
could
for
eat
later."
the village now."
Yeah, and he's so mad about this girl Pust murdering parts of him.
Mhm.
And then he's like, "Ooh, I smell human and animal. Easy pickings." And then
Third time's the charm.
It is funny how, I have to say, I'm struck by how we are introduced to Dejim as being like this
Ultimate.
this badass, just completely terrifying divers of this force of nature that's gonna just cannot be stopped. And then like literally every fight, it's like, "Oh, ouch! Oh, this girl, ow!"
Sacrificed 7 of the strongest mages ever to have been born to this realm immediately upon being released.
I will eat all of. Oh, why are you doing that to me?
Youchie, aru.
So he does attempt to chow down on Masangolani, who is awesome. Does a backflip off the horse, lands on the ground, knife. We forgot to mention that she borrows Absalar's knife as well, which is like another moment where Absalar's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I love this fight scene. Really cool how it's kind of on these inclines that are crumbling, and so it's hard to climb up them because everything is
Scree
cascading down. Yeah, the scree. Yeah, it's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just awesome, like surviving, falling on the ground, slicing, bits of divers.
I like that it's described that like the divers attack her horse. She jumps off of it, makes it okay. She is running through some forest, and she says she hears footsteps, but then she doesn't. So the thing she takes that as it's going to attack, and she sort of throws herself to the ground as it jumps over her right at the very moment. Like great random diver sense, random attack sense.
Very cool.
And then sliced up though.
She gets mauled, but she's also takes out pieces of Dejim, and then she hears worst thing approaching. She just kind of gets flat on the ground. Is like, "Hey, this is it. This is the end." And a hound of shadow makes eye contact with her and is like, "I'm not gonna kill you. I'll let you live."
I like that it's described like whether it be by the power of the Hound of Shadow or just her own anxiety that she can't draw breath. She's lying there and she's effectively paralyzed, I assume just with fear, but the way
I thought it was like this cold, like sucked the breath out of her, and it was almost a magical effect.
That's what it felt like to me as well. And then as soon as it's like, no, she's able to.
Awesome. I thought that was so rad. Yeah. Very, very cool. And then we cut back to Dejim for a second, and he's like, "This sucks. Literally every time I go to eat somebody, What is going on with me? And this one's not even magical. It's just a person.
Just a mortal person took out another one and then maimed another one. Now I'm down to 3 little puppy dogs and 4 little puppy dogs, and one of them's limping.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm. But even so,
skip leg day at the gym.
I like, even though like he just got beat up again, he's like, I do sense something else is here. He's like, I'll put the wounded one out and maybe lay a trap. And I was like, no, you're done for, buddy.
Oh, buddy.
It's over for you.
You got no idea what's coming for you.
Mm-hmm.
So then we cut back to Fiddler and Kalam and Quick Ben, and they're like, did you see that? Did you guys see all of that? That was nuts.
Well, they're like, we got to get off the road. People are like feverish. It's like night now. So everybody who had like brutal sunburns from the desert during the day is now like shivering and getting fever. And they're like, there's dogs surrounding us. And they're like, okay, crazies, chill out. There's no dogs surrounding us. And then everybody has to get off the road. I love that Fiddler's like, oh, there's danger. I should get back with my squad, and like walks back there. And Korab suddenly has a giant stick.
It's like, don't worry, I got a stick.
And he's like, where'd you get that? And he's like, he shrugs. And they're all like prepping for something. And they're like, I don't think they're coming for us, but everybody be cool. Yeah. And then we get the cool lizard cat / puppy dog brawl, in which the Shadow Hounds easily come out on top.
So rad. How Jim's like spreading his divers out, and they're still getting mauled by the hounds. And he's like, okay, well, I'm the last remaining part of me. As long as I'm this far, and he just gets picked up and just running through the forest. You know, why isn't it eating me? Why? At least I'm alive.
Picture like if you see those videos of people are like, my dog took my GoPro, and it's just like all totally he can hear is like, it's just running and running and running and running and running, and he's like, okay, well, I guess this is my life now.
It's exactly what it is. When I was a kid, we had a dachshund named Zachary Barker. And Zachary Barker had a stuffed animal that it loved. And we had a pool in our backyard. And Zachary Barker would often pick up his little stuffed animal and just walk it around the pool, like happily walking it around the pool. Like, I'm taking my thing for a walk, and he would walk around the pool and he'd come back and dump. And that's it's kind of what Jim's doing.
You remind me of
it's happening to Jim, I should say.
You remind me of that cowboy who got a dachshund. He wanted to get a long little doggy.
Well done.
Thank you.
I love it.
Anyway.
All right. So then we shoot over to, for some reason, that I'm not really sure about, we shoot over to Lieutenant Poor's, Captain Kindly. There's a whole section with the 14th. And I mean, I guess there's good reason but it just felt like such a jarring shift to shoot over and check in with all the leaders, Tavor, Nil and Nether, the Fists.
Speaking of jarring shift, I just remembered something that we did not mention that was like seemed very important.
Okay.
Is Dujek is gone. Dujek was like, oh, I saw something more important, and left his host. And so he was not actually in the camp when Gnu showed up.
Right.
I
didn't catch that as being, I saw something more important. I just thought they were like, he's not around right now. I didn't flag it as being, he's off doing something.
My impression with Dujek was like, there's something that I gotta do. It's not for the whole host. I am gonna go do it. But he hasn't been back, if I read it correctly.
Well, we had also
it was like notable that he wasn't with that crew, but he's also not with this crew, and so he's not around. And I forgot to mention that earlier.
No, that's a good point. I didn't flag that as being significant, but you're right to point it out. The other thing we learned earlier in the book, the whole before Egatan and the fire and all that stuff, was that Dujek's host isn't really Dujek's host anymore. Like it's a pale imitation of what it once was.
Yes.
So I think that's important too. Anyway, so we get this scene, you know, they're talking about they're so far away from the city. They're trying to figure out what to do. They're talking about, the Talana Moss melted the jagged ice and caused the sea levels to rise.
Mhm.
Interesting stuff, but I wasn't really sure what the takeaway was supposed to be. Other than that we finally get to like Keneb's point of view, and Keneb is like, man, all of the learnings from the Chain of Dogs has been ruined. We, like all of our takeaways, all of this sort of weird reverence for it has been twisted and turned into something that I don't like anymore. Even the people, Coltane's memory is being kind of misused.
Yeah. Sorry, it's noon, and so it's the most chimes from the clock that we could possibly have.
Yes.
The thing, it's to me, it seemed more like just observations, like societally speaking, about like, okay, we just had this big war, and even like the people who would have been enemies are now capitalizing on imagery from the war. They're capitalizing on the memory of these people in a way that is destroying it. So like that, to me, it seemed like I didn't know what to take from it other than sort of another societal critique.
Yeah, musing on the way these things get bastardized. Yeah.
So they like have, what is it, like vases and things that they've painted so many yellow butterflies on, which is like the death of Sormo. Yeah. And then they have just basically like, get your Wiccan paraphernalia here. Yeah. We've got Coltane.
Get your Chain of Dogs.
Get your Croclan. Exactly. So
you haven't lived through the Chain of Dogs unless you have got a Chain of Dogs t-shirt.
Yeah, I lived through the Chain of Dogs, and all I got was this stupid t-shirt. It's sort of like just being like, gross. That's gross that this is something that people are doing. And then I forget if it was this scene or if it was just like something that was mentioned a bunch of times throughout these chapters. Does Keneb look up and be like, man, there's a bunch of birds everywhere?
Yeah.
Which I do think is interesting, because they're like talking about Coltane. They're talking about Chain of Dogs thing. I don't think they identify what kind of birds they are, but I do know that he was taken away by a whole bunch of crows.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. Then we have also earlier tidbit that I didn't mention that turns out to be important in the next scene is that they send off our horse rider, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. She'll be back lickety split. No worries. What we should do? We should like take a break. Like, let's just sit here, wait for her to come back, and everything will be good. And Ferdinand's sword is like, no, we move. We keep moving. And this next scene, they come upon the dead horse from Masan Galani, and if she had not told them to keep moving, they would not have done that. They would not have found that. And I thought that was a cool. It's not really like highlighted or made a big deal of, but her instinct to make them continue to go is the only reason they even get that information that she wasn't going to be coming back.
Well, I like it because it's sort of like the same sense of like somebody would have been abandoned, and because of sort, they were not. So, we had, what's her face? Sin.
Yeah.
Like Ferdinand believing Sin, but I'm wondering how much of it was like Sin's powers versus Ferdinand maybe having a sense for...
I think Ferdinand is being shown to have great instincts for these things.
Yes.
She really is an excellent leader and a great captain. Anyway, they find the dead horse, and Telerast and Curdle are like chowing down on the dead insects that are like bird-sized insects. It's so gross.
Yeah.
And Lestar is like, what the hell are those skeleton things? And Absalar's like, oh, those are mine. Those are my friends.
Oh, those are my buddies.
And they're sitting there like, man, I guess Masan Galani's dead. There's no way she survived this. And she's like,
Guess
not
again.
completely dead.
I love that. She's like, here's your sword back, by the way, or your dagger back.
She's like, you can keep it. You can keep that.
So great being like, there's no way anyone could have survived this.
Look slightly to your left. Bleeding out over here.
And they're like, all right, get the mages. And then is Bottle right there in this scene, sort of driving forward, pushing to the front to like just look at stuff and be like, critters.
Yeah. And Fiddler's like, Bottle, tell me what you're noticing about those two critters. He's like, what? Me? Nothing. I think I shouldn't say because Abslar and you are friends. And Fiddler's like, I don't trust anybody. So you're not hurting any trust.
I don't even trust you.
Yeah.
The other thing I like is that before this, it's sort of like Prime that Bottle's like looking at stuff because he's doing the thing where he's like trying to look through animals' eyes, but he's like failing to do so, or like something's stopping him, or they got eaten, I think.
Well, he has that Cape Moth that he like sees Jim coming through the eyes of.
Mm-hmm. And then there's a Ryzen.
The Ryzen.
But he's like, I'm not 100% sure what I'm looking at. And he's like, spit it out. And it's like, well, the souls in those dinosaurs are dragons. Oh,
meow, 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 meow. I was like, oh, that's a cool way to end the chapter. Very cool. Oh, the other big reveal he had internally, not to Fiddler, was that Dead Smell is a necromancer.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was, that's, I mean, obviously, your name's Dead Smell. It's kind of a giveaway.
Yeah. Wait, was that a secret? Or, but it seemed like Bottle was just realizing
animator. What could I be?
The Undeadifier. It did seem funny that
My name is Nick Romancer. Sorry, that was terrible.
They're like, oh, he must be a lover. These dragons.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the dragons that were chained up for being jerks. Maybe like their spirits got out.
Yeah.
And they were like, but no, we talked to those dragons. They were in their own bodies at the time. Being like, let us out. We'll definitely eat you. Give us a reason not to.
Yeah. Is that Tellarest and Curdle? Ooh.
Well, I don't know.
Good connection. Interesting. I thought that was a cool reveal. Chapter 14 starts with Leoric. I love all this stuff. I love all this Solara stuff. I love at this village with Barathol, and I love Hayrith. I love all of this stuff. And she's just like, I do not want this child. I have no desire for this child. Leoric's like, what? That's not cool. You're just the mama.
So righteous good that he's like pushing his beliefs in such a way that she's like, I just don't want it. Look, they want it. They'll take it. It's fine. And he's like, but it's yours though. He like just can't get over himself.
It's so great. It's so great. And I love how Hayrith is like, we got two girls named Jenna and they could team up. I think it's Jenna, right? Something like that.
Jessa,
yes. The two Jessas. Jessa from the block and Jessa from the corner, you know?
Yeah.
I love it. I love how like there's two people with the same name. Both of them could team up. One can nurse it. One can raise it. It takes a village of Jessas.
We also finally got the shouldn't have been a reveal, was not a reveal, a reminder of who the father was. Corbelow
Dom.
Obviously.
The Nippon. Of course, the Nippon Corbelow Dom. We knew that. Yes. So obviously, you know, she does not want this child, was not born of any kind of intent or love. And there's this, what are we going to do with it? Leoric is just so clutching his pearls about a mom not wanting her child. And, and meanwhile, Solara's like, what happened to Heberick? And Berthol's like, oh, we buried him. She's like, yeah, Crocus is going to want that
That.
body. So
Yeah.
y'all should dig them up.
And eventually she's like, fine, give me that baby. I'm gonna stop leaking.
Yes.
She's like, I'll take it, but only because it'll like relieve some of the pressure that I'm dealing with.
Yeah. And Lork's like, oh, I'm going to get my familiar back. This is going to be sweet. And Barathol walks over to Gray Frog's corpse, sees like this stain underneath it that's just like thousands of flies that just seeped out of its body when it died.
Oh, is
So
that
gross.
what happened? I assume that flies went to go try and land on its body as like a corpse and then just couldn't. There was just such a weird demonic stink that they were like, and they died.
Maybe. My interpretation was that he had eaten so many flies and they just like seeped out of his body when he died.
You might be totally right. They did call it like a growing stain. So it's like just like the flies leaking out. And I love him going up to it and being like, it's Barathol goes up to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, it's moving maybe. And then Gray Frog's little voice come in and I was like, yeah, baby. I'm so hyped that he's still here.
Smaller Gray Frog comes out of large Gray Frog.
Smaller Gray Frog with like two of the arms being like, oh, those are some fresh arms on that one. The whole slimy body. And then, so they go dig up the body and Gray Frog's like, what's up? Where my buddies at? I can like sense them. And he's like, well, you better get going. He's in there. Like Solara's going to just go lose it on him if you don't hop over there. And so he goes and meanders over and he's like, what's up? My brother. I love that he calls him his brother.
Yeah.
And then he's like, Solara, my love, I've never loved anything more than you. She's like, why are you talking to me all of a sudden? He's like, well, you were with Brood. Can't talk to you. Because the baby, it would be bad for the baby. But now that that's over, I love you so much. You are the greatest thing. And she's like, everybody else had to listen to this? Shut up. Like instantly annoyed by Gray Frog.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, I'm awesome because I'm not even charging for the baby. I'm just going to give it away for free. Free babies, right?
People love babies.
Only. Yeah. And she's going to keep traveling with Crocus. So that's her intention. Meanwhile, Crocus, we cut over to Crocus and he has this vision, sort of half asleep. He was like, oh, my guts are back inside me. This is like this tiny scarf where my guts hung out. He has this memory of like feeling lighter because his guts fell out. I was like, oh.
And then the weight of his own like guts pulling him off the horse.
Awful.
Yeah.
Then he has this vision of a conversation between the Queen of Dreams and Leoman and Dun Sparrow. And they have this interesting conversation where the Queen of Dreams is like, you know who I really wanted to come with me is Korab, because he's chosen by Opon, which I love the payoff of this because I don't think we knew this before, but obviously Korab is chosen by Opon. He's like the luckiest dude in the entire series, constantly lucky stuff. It just makes so much sense that he's like Opon's chosen.
Yeah. It's interesting to like look back and think of those lucky moments that he has and then thinking about when Crocus had the coin and he'd be like, I bent down to pick up the coin and I dodged a bullet. And it's like all very, it's all very Three Stooges.
It's consistent though.
Yes. It's great. It's great. I agree. Totally the payoff was awesome.
Yeah. But she's like, well, Dun Sparrow is marked by Hood. So that's not the god I wanted involved with that. But then she has this cool reveal that Hood is the one really responsible for Whiskey Jack's death.
Yeah.
Which I thought was amazing.
Because Whiskey Jack stole his sister away.
Yes.
And so, like, however he convinced Whiskey Jack or softly guided Whiskey Jack for like never accepting the medical help that he would have changed the world by him not dying, instead died so easily, and that was Hood's greatest revenge. That was
so cool. But then like also Hood regrets it to a certain extent. It's like, I was too harsh on that Whiskey Jack fella.
Too late now.
Too late now. And then the Queen of Dreams turns and looks directly at Crocus, and he wakes up, which is cool.
Well, she freezes the scene first.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it seems
yeah.
like he's getting like maybe it's his master of the deck. Oh, that's not him. Maybe it's like some kind of powers that he has that is like he's looking into something that we're not supposed to see. But then the scene freezes and she looks over and
she's like, I gave you this info. This is me giving you this info. I'm the Queen of Dreams giving you a dream. Which
makes it also interesting to think like, is that like a true vision? Did she concoct it? Did that actually happen? There's just little questions about it.
That chime means that it's time for me to tell you something that could be considered a tiny spoiler. So if you want to skip ahead 5 seconds or 10, 15 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, I got this from the cheat sheet that I use that we always put a link in, but it kind of shocked me and I want to bring it up to you. Evidently, according to this cheat sheet, this is the last appearance of the Queen of Dreams, Leomen, and Dunsparrow. They never appear in the entire series again. I know, right? Yeah. You're muted still.
What?
Yeah.
That is...
I know, right?
I cannot believe that.
I know.
So
that's what I was shocked because it feels like the Dunsparrow thing is a massive bombshell that is going to have repercussions. And maybe it does in how it relates to Whiskey Jack. And especially because this whole thing is like the Queen of Dreams looks right at him. It's like, no, we never see Leomen, Queen of Dreams, or Dunsparrow. Evidently, Leomen and the Queen of Dreams show up or make an appearance again in one of the Ian C. Esselmont novels, but as total minor characters, they're mentioned. But I know.
So it'll peek behind there. You mentioned that like there's something in the guide that maybe we wouldn't want to know. And like, I was like, okay, if we get stuck on it and wanting to talk about it, then bring it up. I thought it would be like a scene that's coming up that sort of like goes to the past and talks about all these people for like a really long time. I was not expecting it to be 3 people who I perceive as like main characters.
Yes. That's what I was shocked, especially the Dunsparrow stuff, which was, it really felt like this is, I mean, the way Fiddler reacts to that information and like, oh, we got to find her. We got to talk to her, No,
I feel
evidently she never appears again.
And not like in like, not like a reincarnated form. I assume that it would, if there's like any reincarnations of these people. This is
the line from the cheat sheet. This is Dunsparrow's final appearance in any Malazan novel.
What?
Very surprising, right? But I think that it's just there to sort of inform Whiskey Jack. It's not really about her, but I'm surprised.
That is shocking. That is fascinating. And no matter what, I think it's fascinating to put it as a note in the cheat sheet.
Yeah.
I guess
I think that
it's helpful for us because we would talk about it so much. But it is also because of the nature of the books. Like if I was just reading them straight through, or like if we were just reading them, even talking about it this week, I feel like it would be something that we would get to the end of this book and maybe be like, what happened there? But there's so much other things that I know that, I mean, somebody's name who's important drops out of my head. Like the existence. But that's so crazy.
It's wild because I feel like that's the kind of thing you in particular, who's so good at making these connections, would be like, maybe that's a Dunsparrow thing. Like for novels...
for the next year of my life.
Yeah. But evidently that's the case. Crazy, right?
Crazy.
Yeah. So Crocus wakes up and Barathol is there, and Crocus is like, so I'm alive. That's cool. And he's like, yes. And Solara really wants to talk to you. Excuse me, Solara had the baby. She really wants to talk to you. And Crocus is like, he didn't mention anybody else.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He also says, by the way, my name's Barathol Makar. And Crocus is like, I know a Makar.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, yeah, it's my cousin.
cousins.
It's not even a thing. We don't even know each other, basically.
Yeah.
Everybody's a cousin in my village. It's like not even a big deal. And Crocus is like, I don't believe you.
and Crocus is like, the way that he talked sounded like he would be happy to slit Kalam's throat. It sounded like he would happily murder him at this earliest possible opportunity.
Yeah. He also says that Berthal is big enough that he could like throw Kalam around like a rag doll. And I was like, oh, and we know Kalam's big.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was cool too.
Yeah.
All right. So then Leoric, he kind of muses on how this community used to be thriving and now it's not. And he thinks about Berthal's crime that he cast open the gates of Aaron or Aaron, and how he kind of caused this Aaron rebellion.
The crime is that he supposedly threw open the gates to allow the Talanamas in, but he's like, Talanamas don't need gates.
Yeah.
Why has nobody asked that before?
Yeah, they can be dust. They don't need a gate. What does it matter? Mm-hmm. What does it matter if you open the doors?
Nobody asked why he killed the fist.
Yeah. Pretty interesting. And then Gray Frog talks about the silent god, has a little story about the silent god, and has this wonderful musing on monotheism versus polytheism, which I thought was just really, really cool and well articulated.
Mm-hmm.
And then Leoric and Gray Frog leave the village. Are you ready for this?
Oh my God.
This is Leoric and Gray Frog's final appearance in the main series.
No. What? What the hell is happening?
Yeah. Leoric appears as a minor character in one of Ian C. Esselmont's novels. Gray Frog never appears again. They walk off into the sunset.
I am speechless. Like what? Like literally the surface of the sun. They talk about it being like that's. I have questions.
I'm shocked as well.
I have questions.
Yeah.
I honestly don't even know what to say. That's bananas.
I know you're sad about Gray Frog, one of your faves.
My boy, my baby.
Yeah. He gets resurrected, and then he just gets to live
his life with his brother. Yeah. Profess his love. Yeah. Enjoy his new body.
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, there's lots more going on. So I get it. You can't, tie up every loose end, but it's surprising to me.
It is surprising.
Yeah. So then we go back to Berthal, and this villager tells him that Leoric and Gray Frog left via Warren, never to be seen again. And Berthal is like, okay, time to smith. And he's starts, he's got just enough left to make one final weapon, and he's gonna make something rad. Can't wait to see what that is, but he's making something awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now we switch over to folks we haven't talked about in a little bit. Karsa and Samar Dev are still hanging out with Boat Finder, and Karsa is determined to, do what he said he was going to do for Boat Finder's tribe, which is basically murder a lot of people. They're wandering through. Samar is like thinking about stuff. She's like, man, wouldn't it be great if people had shoes?
I know. She's like just drawing swooshes in the ground, being like the cool on the side.
She draws a guy like split legs in his arm out. Anyway, and they come across this crazy corpse that has become a tree, which isn't that what we think happened to somebody else?
Probably
Somebody else. Anyway, but it's a Jagat corpse that has like the chest is caved in and a tree kind of grew out of it. Pretty crazy. But I thought there was somebody else we found out that was like planted as a tree. Who
was
that?
it? I mean,
Bidithal?
any of the other
Somebody?
Jagat people? I mean, maybe
Somebody
there's
else.
something in the grove that was Karsa's
maybe I'm
grove.
confused with something else. Anyway,
but so the person was planted as a tree. We get like a little bit of lore that when Jagat die, their bones become wood and keep growing. That's like seems to be like an all Jagat thing. I couldn't tell if it was.
Oh, I thought it was just this particular one.
I
maybe it's
got the impression that it was like an all Jagat thing, but I couldn't tell. It seemed like lore. I couldn't tell if they were describing this. I was struggling when I was reading. I was very sleepy. But the thing that the other part that's interesting is this body, now a tree. They were like, it's still alive, I guess, because the tree is alive, but has been recently pushed over within like the last 7 days, they said.
Yeah. Right. Yes. And then they arrive at this, the Anabar camp, where everybody has been murdered. And Boatfinder starts weeping for her, her villagers. And Karsa's like, there's some big, scary creature that's been here. And I'm gonna go kill it.
They're like a big quadruped has been here. Like, oh, like a bear? He's like, yeah, but with scales. And I'm like, oh, it's that. I guess it followed them through all the way from all the warrens.
The single-eyed scale bear? Is that what we're thinking? Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. And immediately he's like, the hunt, and just like takes off into the woods.
Yeah, and and is it right here where he says, where he comes back, and we come back to Samar, and she's, they're sitting there just kind of bored, waiting for him to come back.
Look, she's like buried a couple of bodies.
Oh, that's right. That's what it is. Yeah, she's burying the bodies, and he comes back, and she's like, "Let me guess, you murdered it. It's you had a big fight." And he's like, "No, just got away. It got away.
Got away. Also, what are you doing? It's just going to dig them up."
Yeah, it's coming back. It's hungry, super hungry. And it's going to dig up these bodies. And they notice she's like, why don't we take boats? And he's like, I don't want to leave my horse behind. I'm not going to take boats. And they notice the moon is acting weird, which is like, is this the Mogora stuff or is this something else?
I assume that it is something else.
Like
Mogora like moved the moon, but they're like, did you notice anything weird about the moon? And like apparently there's been like tons of shooting stars recently. He calls them like blades
fire
in the
swords.
Night. Fire swords, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like so many of them slicing through. And they're saying that the moon is crumbling to bits and it's falling into the atmosphere.
That seems bad.
That seems world ending.
Yeah. And then we have this this entire scene is one of my favorite scenes of this novel. The discussion between Samar Dev and Karsa. Every time they get into a debate, I just love how it's written. I love how both sides are articulated. Mm-hmm. Erikson gives them both equal skill in conveying their point, which I love. Even Karsa, who's not exactly an orator, is so effective at arguing his side or making excellent landing points, and they talk about this idea of civilization, and Samar's like, no, civilization, having civilization and get along with each other, and you wouldn't understand because you're a savage. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I understand what civilization is. It's continuing to be better at killing people. And she's like, no, but well, okay, yes, but that's not all it is. It's such a great back and forth. I just love that scene.
Yeah, I love their dynamic. I completely agree with you that like it doesn't feel at odds with Karsa's character for him to be so well spoken about this thing, because it is it was something that he had vows around. It's
Right.
such intimate knowledge of it because it's how he's just lived and it's just who he is to the core of his being. That
And also his
describing
journey,
it with such
his journey through, that entire the first part of House of Chains, where we're with him. His journey is really like getting perspective on this very issue, right?
Yes.
Is like moving outside the boundary of his little insular world and seeing how the greater world operates and changing his perspective. And like we were with him as he lived this revelation about civilization. I just think it's so cool.
It's so cool. And like, even like going back to it, it's not like he's like, oh, my tribe's stupid. We're like we're a bunch of fools that were doing things wrong. He's like, I have to go apologize to, I don't know if this is the same scene. I have to go apologize to my father and tell him he was right to doubt. But it's not like we have to destroy everything. It's like we have to change and we have to become better than what we were. But we have to, it seems like he wants to help them avoid the pitfalls of the things that are bad that he perceives about civilization.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. And then, they hear these wolves start howling, and Karsa smiles. He's like, yeah, savagery.
Hunting time, baby.
Time to die. All right. Then we head over to Mappo, and we have this extended flashback or vision or memory that Mappo has of the Battle of Bayan Ekar, which is I think just a extended flourish by Erikson. It really is just the kind of thing that you find in these Malazan novels that you just don't find anywhere else, or very rarely do you find an author willing to sort of do stuff like this, where he's got this intricate, detailed, in-depth discussion of this thing that I think exists only to have Mappo go, and that's why you don't talk a lot.
Yeah.
I think that, correct me if you have a different take, but we have this massive description of this backstory, this incredible battle of this guy who was known for being the quiet type, and then goes through this whole battle and this transformation and has this amazing innovation in military strategy to take down the enemy, and ends up as a drunk babbling in the pub because they outsmarted him and just killed off all the food supply. And at the end, he's like, and that's why you don't talk a lot, Iskerl Pust. And I just felt like we have this long, sprawling yarn that really is just this morality tale for Mappo to be like, so shut your yapper.
It's so like, this is I think the scene that I was thinking that if at the end of it you were like, and we never hear about that general again, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not surprised. Like that
Right.
this is the thing I was thinking of, because it is so contained, and like,
it's a short story.
It's a short story. And that is exactly my reading of it, is like, here's this crazy tale that is only to inform this exact moment in my particular frustrations in trying to suffer through being in Iskerl Pust's company. Amazing choice.
It's incredible. It's again, such a flourish, it's such a cool departure. We have this extended, long, detailed, well thought out, expertly executed parable that is just like, and so shut up. I just love it.
Yeah.
Because Mappo is having to, endure Iskerl Pust. And he's the only one that like says it succinctly. We're like, this guy is speaking his inner monologue out loud. So good. But then he also is like, why are we taking so long? We went this shortcut that is actually lengthening our journey. Why would House Shadow
do this?
Want to delay me?
Thinking of all these moments of like just choices they make, and then being like, oh, this was guided. I mean, this one pretty explicitly guided because Pust is there,
Yeah.
but seeing every little moment and every little choice as like somebody around you believes in or like likes one of these gods the best, whether they like pray to them or whatever it is, they're all kind of affiliated. So every little choice is like you're like a playing piece. Interesting for him to be like, why does Host Shadow want me to do this? And then suddenly there's like shadows flying over them, and they're like, oh gosh, we're gonna get eaten. And Pust inner monologue being like, oh, this is actually, we're walking the longest way across this whole swamp. And he just turns to the right and walks out of it instantaneously. Is like, it's just a fascinating moment where I'm just kind of like there with Mappo being like, yeah, why?
Yeah.
Why?
And then they run into Spite, who's just chilling.
Classic eating an apple, being a sassy character.
Yeah. A former nameless one who helped release Dijim, whose entire stated purpose from the nameless ones was to kill Mappo and allow what's his name? The other guy. What's his name? Begins with T.
This guy.
Yeah, slicked hair mucus man. To usurp Mappo's position with Ikariam. And she's like, hey, I'll tell you everything that we were doing. I'm no longer a nameless one. Screw those people. I can help you. I'll give you info. In fact, I'll give you a boat if you want a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And you help you get.
I think it's more that come get on this boat with me. I'll tell you everything you want to know.
Yeah. So interesting. We don't really know her motivations for that yet, but
they don't seem great.
They don't. I mean, her name is Spite. I do like how Iskarol Pust is constantly like interjecting, like, well, that's why your name is Spite.
Maybe that's why you don't have any friends.
It's so funny.
I also like that Iskarol's like, this guy's going to make bad choices. Now I must stay with him no matter what. And I also like that her name's being Spite, being like, I was a nameless one, but now I'm going to get them. You might say spite them.
That's funny. I did want somebody to say, when she's like, my name is Spite, and then she's like, I was a nameless one. It's like, oh, so now you have a name. I wanted somebody to just point that out. Like, did you have a name when you were a nameless one?
Or is that like new?
Like, yeah, anyway.
The organization is nameless?
Yes. Dig into the naming part. Then we have this really enigmatic little moment with this 9-year-old boy, and I kind of don't understand what's going on with the 9-year-old boy. But then the next scene made me understand. Maybe you got it. When we check in with Felicin Younger, who was abducted by Kulat and the forces of the Crippled God
and the Plague Gang.
The Plague Gang. Yes, we find out. I think get a little clarity on what this plan is that the Crippled God is enacting, which is, they're digging up this buried city. They're kind of making a new base, secret underground lair, and they are spreading the plague. And this little 9-year-old boy will be one of the carriers.
I think
such a dark concept too.
It's gross, and it's dark in the same way. All the stuff with the Crippled God that's like very close to anything that feels really close to him is like disgusting in a particular way.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that Kulat like said was going to happen. Like, oh yeah, we're here in the city, and yeah, plague is happening, but people are going to come here because as we've seen from the little boy's perspective, the plague has completely killed everybody's villages, and people are looking for a place to go. They don't have anywhere to be. He's a carrier, so he is immune to the plague, and so he's not dying from it, but he can spread it for a long time. But he is specifically a carrier. He's unique in that eventually he will no longer be one. And they're like, and then we'll dispose of him.
Yeah, he'll become useless because he will actually get better and not carry the plague anymore. It's it's so foul to be like, oh, this little boy is only useful by poisoning other people.
Yeah.
So literally go from place to place, bringing this little boy in and having them infect large
everybody.
swaths of the population. Ugh.
And like we meet him because he's, been sick, but survived the sickness and wakes up to dogs who have eaten everybody else in the village. They have everybody else who has fallen sick. They've consumed so much of the flesh that all of them are like fat now.
Yeah.
And then he is brought to this village showed up at the gates with his 12 dogs and is now just effectively like a prophet of sickness against his will.
Kulat's like, he's gonna be useless to us. So that sucks for him. And
Felician's like kind of hot.
No. Not happening.
Looks like he's gonna be cute.
Oh, I didn't get
eventually.
That. Did she say that?
Well, she was talking about, she's like, they have satisfied my every need because I am the princess, except for the fact that I'm going through puberty and I really want sexy things.
Yeah. I didn't think she thought the boy was, but maybe that's...
Well, she like
she does name him Crocus though, which is a little...
freaky deaky.
Yeah.
So
you'll be my Crocus now.
She looks at him and she's like, yeah, okay, he's skinny and completely malnourished and plague ridden now, but he's gonna get better, you say? And she kind of like does one of these and is like, there's been a little bit more meat on those bones, which will happen because we're gonna feed him.
Yeah,
he'll start looking like a
teach him how
man
to
soon.
Dance, and we'll like.
Yeah, I got a bit of a vibe from her being like, my only need has not been hello there. Icky. Crocus, my boy.
But she's also like oddly okay with being, I mean, I guess she doesn't have much of a choice, but also she's like, okay, well then if you're going to make me the leader, I'm going to give you some commands.
I like how it's described of like, I'm going to give you this command. You're going to put him over here so his dogs can run around. And they're like, but my lady, that was going to be your private garden. And she's like, put him over there. And like immediately Kulat it just described that like, he has a darkness come out over him in the moment where she actually has, it seems like the impression I got, it was like the first time that she embraced this leadership role that she's been given. And pretty much immediately is like, oh, Kulat doesn't like that actually.
Right. But she didn't see it, right?
Yes.
She did not see him like
only eyes for Crocus the Younger.
I do like how the plague people are like, but we were going to make a garden for you.
Yeah.
With beautiful, beautiful flowers. Also the plague, but beautiful flowers. All right, so that's how the scene ends, is she's like, I shall name him Crocus. And that is how chapter 14 ends. Pretty good stuff, I would say. And I feel like we kind of have a sense of where the second half of this novel is headed with plague showdowns. Everybody's going to have to deal with the plague. I don't know how you deal with the plague exactly, but there we go.
Yeah.
All right. So we also like to end the show, as you know, with our favorite quotes, our favorite sections of the portion that we read. I have two. One is long and one is short.
I have a couple as well. I'm going to razor it down. All mine are of medium length. I'm going to start with this one.
Okay.
That is Dejim Nebral talking about the eating all the fisher people.
Okay.
Before. If man and woman will not remember, then they deserved all that was delivered upon them. Death, destruction, devastation. This was no God's judgment. It was the world's, nature's own. Exacted in that conspiracy of indifference that has so terrified and baffled humankind. Lands subside, waters rush in. The rains come, then never come. Forests die, rise again, then die once more. Men and women huddle with their broods in dark rooms and all their belated begging, and their eyes fill with dumb failure, and now they are crumbled specks of gray and white in black silt, motionless as a memory of stars in a long dead night sky. Exacting nature's judgment, such was Dejim Nebral's purpose. For the forgetful, their very shadows stalk them. For the forgetful, death ever arrives unexpectedly.
The forgetful. I love that. That I keyed on that section as well. It's so good.
So
the
good.
forgetful. Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. That's kind of the same vibe.
Yeah.
My first section is lengthy. It is the epigraph.
We got it.
Epigraph.
We
Nailed
got
it.
it this
Only
time.
took a year
20
and
attempts.
6.5 books. All right. I love this epigraph. We don't talk about them enough, I think, on the show.
Yeah.
But
I think I
probably because
highlighted this as well.
so good. I'm going to read the whole thing because it's so amazing. There is something profoundly cynical, my friends, in the notion of paradise after death. The lure is evasion. The promise is excusative. One need not accept responsibility for the world as it is, and by extension, one need do nothing about it. To strive for change, for true goodness in this mortal world, one must acknowledge and accept within one's own soul that this mortal reality has purpose in itself, that its greatest value is not for us, but for our children and their children. To view life as but a quick passage along a foul, tortured path, made foul and tortured by our own indifference, is to excuse all manner of misery and depravity, and to exact cruel punishment upon the innocent lives to come. I defy this notion of paradise beyond the gates of bone. If the soul truly survives the passage, then it behooves us, each of us, my friends, to nurture a faith in similitude. What awaits us is a reflection of what we leave behind. And in the squandering of our mortal existence, we surrender the opportunity to learn the ways of goodness, the practice of sympathy, empathy, compassion, and healing, all passed by in our rush to arrive at a place of glory and beauty, a place we did not earn and most certainly do not deserve.
Ooh, baby.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Perfection.
Incredible.
So
I want to memorize that. It's so good.
Yeah. I had that one highlighted, and when I was looking through mine, I'm like, I bet that Jeff does, and I want him to read it because he's good at it.
Oh, thank you. It's funny when I'm like, okay, it's time to sit down and read the oh well, that's immediately. That's so good.
Yeah, there's so many that I love of the epigraphs that I love, but so many that I don't highlight because I don't feel confident reading them because they are more poetry. Yeah. And I know there's a cadence, and I feel like I would have to practice and identifying what the cadence would be to read it properly. I think the start of chapter 13 is a couple stanzas of a bunch of sort of poetry bits. I don't know words, but I loved it. But I do not feel confident being this is how this should sound. So I don't highlight them a lot. But
don't
you're right.
Let that stop you. I'm sure Mr. Erikson would agree with me and say, just jump in.
Go for it.
Yeah.
But they are great. And that one in particular, excellent. So the other one that I pulled is short, and it's Lorik talking to Solara, being like, take your baby. The longer and more often you hold that girl, Lorik said, the less likely it is that you will do what you presently plan to do. Motherhood is a spiritual state. You will come to that realization before too long. That's good. So why are you still here? Clearly, I'm already doomed to enslavement, no matter how much I rail. Spiritual epiphany is not enslavement. Shows how much you know, High Mage. I love that.
Shows you how much you know.
I love shows how much you know, but also this dude being like, motherhood is beautiful. Yeah. And it's you're telling me what motherhood is like?
Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
Get outta
Eat a bag
here.
of D's, mister.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. You
I love her.
you think that that's not enslavement? Okay, show us how much you know, Chumbawamba. Get out of here.
This one's short. This is Barathol, and I can't remember who he's talking to. Oh, Solara. Solara is like something like what are you, the mayor of this town? And he goes, mayor? I don't think we warrant a mayor. Nah, I'm just the biggest and meanest man living here, which to most minds counts for far too much. Lorik says you betrayed Arin, that you're responsible for the death of thousands when the Talana Mas came to crush the rebellion. We all have our bad days, Solara. I love it. So good.
Yeah, my bad day. I stubbed my toe. What'd you do? Oh, accidentally got a city massacred or intentionally? Who knows?
I like how he's like, I'm the biggest and meanest dude here, which people put way too much stock in. That's just not so good.
Great chapters.
Great chapters. So good. Thanks for being with us. 2 more next week. We'll see you then. Hey, don't forget, if you'd like to give us a topic for the beginning of the show, send it to dlcfeedback@gmail.com. Post it as a comment on the YouTube or as in our Discord, which is 5x5 DLC on Discord. We'd love to have you tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about.
When the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality, open up those pages, sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends.